Welcome to the Lighthouse Door Project. I'm Avraham Shira. It's nice to see all of you there. Welcome, Shirley and Alan, Esther, and Rena. I imagine there's a few others over on the list if I keep looking, but it's good to be back. We had a good week last week, I thought, with our meditation on the first five letters of the Aleph Bet, the language of God and the body of man. And the overriding concept that we were trying to share was that God created a language that reflected human life, that emerged from human life. But Rabbi Nachman tells us that God, when he created the language, he didn't just like sit down and start drawing or writing letters from the shapes out of his imagination, as perfect as God's imagination must be, whatever that means, right? But he actually constricted his wisdom into those shapes. Now, what does that mean? I mean, how many trillions of shapes of things are there? Okay, there's some primary shapes. There's a circle, there's a square, there's a triangle, there's a rectangle, there's a hexagon, there's a pentagon. There, okay, fine. That's a handful. But when we talk about wisdom being contracted into shapes, we're talking about this. I like to think of it as like divine graphics. You know, there's a divine graphics taking place because God's wisdom is not just, oh, a yud looks like a yud because it's like the word yod. And okay, how is a yud like a yod? Those kind of things. That's interesting. And we learned a bet is like a bayit, right? It has a roof, it has a wall, it has a floor, it has an opening. Aleph is like the champion, Alufo Shalom, right? He's got his hands in the air, his feet on the ground. He's exultant, he's running. Of course, we also learned it's the ox, which is this very stable, solid center of ancient economy, and so on and so forth. We learned about the gimel, which is gamal, which is the camel, right? It is also a stable letter. There are letters that aren't stable, and it seems like what are the rabbis doing? They're telling me a shin is not a stable letter. Why? Can any of you guess? I tried to open up the chat and it takes over the middle of my screen, but you could answer verbally. That's fine. I don't need to see. Yeah, if anybody wants to write, why? What does a stable letter mean to you? I'm just asking. I mean, the answer's not so um, far out of our mind. And a shin, for example, if you look at a shin, why is it unstable? Because it has no feet on the ground. It's three bars that join to a point. That's right, Esther Ruth. Very good. And so, okay, well, Rhonda, I'm sure which question you're answering, but a shin, actually, the normal shape of a shin, it doesn't have feet on the ground. And perhaps you're speaking of the gimel, which right has those two little feet. And so a one-footed letter is like a dalid. It's also not stable. And so what's interesting is that the letters that receive tagim in the Torah, there's a notricon, the first letter signification, which is called a notricon, where they take the letters that all receive tagim in the Torah, right? The little flags on top are called the weaker letters. Why? Well, it's called shatnez getz, is the notricon. Shin, a weak letter. No foot on the ground. It's got a point, right? Shat, okay. And then you have the tet. The tet is also considered a problematic letter. It's a shaped, we'll get to the tet maybe tonight. I don't want to give away everything, right? And then the nun, the zayin, a lot of these letters have one foot. And so they get strengthened by the flags, by what they're called the tagim. Now there's a whole Kabbalah about what the tagim, those flags represent. It's a very deep thing. It's really a shir unto itself, but just on one word, it's the tagim represent the connection between the oral Torah and the written Torah, the Chumash and the Talmud. And that's about a connection between white fire and black fire, and how the flags of the Chumash, Rabbi Akiva was able to take those tagim and doresh halachot, infer halachot from those letters by the context of the Torah where the flags appeared, and he was able to create halachot that went all the way into the Talmud because he understood the context of these letters in their places in the Torah. And it's really a deep subject unto itself. But just to give you an idea of the profundity of what we're talking about here. All right, so that's one thing, that the letters emerge from life and that the letters have the relative strength. We learned also, of course, that the letters begin with Aleph on the top of the ladder of holiness, and Taf is at the bottom of the ladder of holiness, the end of the Aleph Bet, and there's this movement of energy from right to left, which is, of course, Chesed to Gevura, which is expansion to constriction. Aleph to Taf. Expansion is Aleph. It's the beginning, it's the opening of everything. And the Taf is the end, right? It's the mark of Cain, the mark of the beast. Oh, well, wait a minute, that's the wrong religion, sorry. I take that back. But that's already another conversation. But the Taf is the line that is the sign that actually protected Cain, we learned, from the beasts, that they wouldn't think he was like them and attack him and eat him, and so on. So we learned also that Dalet is Delet, the door, the opening, the place from inside to outside, which of course is a whole halachic world about that. Because when you're inside your house, the halachot are different in a lot of cases than they are outside your house, especially on Shabbat. You have Rishuta Yechid, which means the authority of the individual, versus Rishuta Rabim, which is the authority of the majority, right? The street is the authority of the majority. Your house is the Rishuta Yechid, it's your authority. And when you transfer through a doorway, you're changing Rishuyot. And in Kabbalah, that means you're going from the Pnimi world to the external world. You know, the Mishnah says that in springtime, anybody who, I'm paraphrasing, but in springtime, anybody who walks down the middle of the street, this is a crazy Mishnah. Anybody who walks down the street in springtime and is run over by a bull, damo b'rosho, the blood is on his own head. In other words, that's a phrase that means a person is responsible for himself. And the springtime bulls are, I guess it's like Pamplona in Spain. Again, the ox, the bull, are standard features in ancient life. And in springtime, they get a little feisty. And if you're in the middle of the road, you could get, things happen. So that's the Rishuti Rabim. You can't go out and sue the owner of such a creature if God forbid, something happens. So the Rishuti Yechid, of course, is your space, and you get to set the tone, and you get to set the rules, and it's your sacred space with Hashem, hopefully. That's why Rabbi Nachman says you have to have your own Avodat Hashem room, a room in your house, a corner in your house, one desk, a partition, an attic, a cellar, some place where you go to be alone with God. And that is holy. And that space becomes special, and your soul remembers it. And you get, actually, I have a study that I use. Usually tonight, I've been broadcasting from the upper room in our house because the reception of the internet is so weak on the lower floor. But, it's like it calls you. It knows you. You feel it. When you have a seat in shul that's your seat, there's a halacha that says, Kol hakoveh makom letfilato ne'ana. That someone who fixes a place for his prayer, he is answered. And because that's your space, and you create a zone for your neshama to express itself. So all the rabbis know what they're talking about. They're just speaking from an inner world that we're not used to. But once you get used to it, you say, wow, that makes sense. That's perfect. Yeah. And even if it just means, like I told a friend, just take a desk and put it on the side of the room and put a little partition up, and that's your space. Because a lot of people live in small places. You don't have your own room, even. Okay. So, and then we came to hey, which means a window. A window is, well, obviously a window is a place that you put a window in your house. Why do you do that? So you can receive sunlight, so you can receive fresh air, so that you can see the birds and the trees. And so a window is a place where not so much of transition like a door, but a window is a place to receive and to give. Also, back in the old joke about the ladies hanging out the window on laundry day talking to each other. And I guess that's a New York, inside New York joke. But I know my grandmother grew up in such a place. And, so the window is this place of connecting. And the window, of course, is also the windows in the Beit HaMikdash are talked about in the Mishnah. Their shape was to bring light out into the world. And so that's important as well. So last week we did this exercise where we meditated first, and then I asked you about the letters and gave each of you a chance to intuit your sensitivity to the letter and what it represents in culture and life, Jewish life especially. But actually, you see, any of the symbols we've learning so far are universal. They're not Judeo-centric, if you will. Okay, so I thought we'd do that again. I enjoy the meditation. I think it's always good for us to meditate. It always helps bring us closer to our true selves and our center and our balance, etc. And it's good to breathe deep nowadays, as try to breathe deep when you're walking through town on a busy day. Okay, so any comments? Did the hey, but we got disconnected. That's true. The hey, I think I kept meditating and away we went. Right. What else can we say about the hay? Well, the hay is 5, of course. The hay is considered extremely holy because it appears twice in God's eternal name, Yud K Vav K, right? And so it is a feminine letter. All letters are either masculine or feminine as well. So that's something to be sensitive to. The hay is made of a dalid and a yud like the dalid is in front, right? And then you have a little yud up front, which is like a foot pointing forward. That foot is actually an upside down yud with a point pointing out. And there are actually Kabbalistic teachings about these things, about the structure of each letter and how they're put together, because there's different ways to write letters. And when a person learns Safrut, he is taught a method of stroking the letter into existence that is very much in connection to the principle of the forming of the letter is done in a certain way to conform to the Kabbalah in terms of the letter's parts and the gematriot and God's name especially. There were Sofrim, holy scribes, that used to go to the mikveh every time they wrote God's name. Now, if you're a sofer and you write fast, you're going to be wet all day, but that's how serious they take the writing of God's name. So you can imagine a holy kamea is God's names written on a cloth, right, and put into a parchment or into a container, and it has power. Okay, so the hay is gematria 5. Of course, 5 fingers of the hands and feet are significant because the hey, being a feminine letter, is a letter of expression. That's why so many words end with hey, ha, that sound. Kabbalah, right? Mikvah. Endless words end with hey because it's that idea of bringing power from above to below. The hay is the gateway of bringing power from above to below. Now we have, of course, the upper hay of God's name corresponds to the left brain. That's where the left brain is the part of the mind that turns intuitive thought into language. Because when you intuit something, it doesn't start out as language, it starts out as an impulse until we translate it into language. And that is accomplished by Bina, the left brain. And then the left brain expresses that into the lower part of the body, into your heart, and into your hands, and into your feet, even. And so an idea becomes an emotion, which becomes an action. And so the letter Hey, the upper Hey, of Bina, is that power of expression of the mind into the body. And then the lower Hey is the hands and the feet that take, and the mouth, that take that energy from the left brain and push it into the world through the five fingers or 10 and the feet, etc. So the letter Hey is very important. It is even so that there is a tradition in Kabbalah to give young baby girls letter names with that end in Hey, just so that she'll have that extra letter in her name. Let's see what else comes to mind from this. Is that the Hey, of course, is also used as a very an emphasizing letter at the beginning of certain words, right? As we say, Erev Vayivoker Yom HaShishi. That HaShishi, none of the other days in the creation story get that Hey. That's called the Hey Ayadua. The Hey was given to Avraham, from Avram to Avraham, and Sarai became Sarah. That Hey is there's a name for it in English grammar. Maybe some of you remember. Oh, slips away at the moment. But that type of Ha Shishi, Ha Yeled, Ha Sefer brings extra emphasis to a word, and to especially something in Kedusha, and it's telling us that something special is happening. Ha Shishi means, it's the end of the creation part of the story, and we're getting ready to go into Shabbat, which, God willing, we will tomorrow. So the Hey has many functions, and I hope this opens that up a little bit for all of us. When you see a Hey, in meditation now, we can go to another level. And that is, there are times when you meditate and the letters fall apart in your mind. Sounds a little curious, right? Why would a letter fall apart in my mind? I'm sitting here trying to see Yud and Hey and Vav and Hey and meditate on God's holy name, and suddenly a letter falls apart. Well, when you're super sensitive and you know yourself and you know your inner vision and your ability to see God's names, when that letter falls apart, it's teaching us something about our soul, because the parts of God's name refer to parts of our soul. So, of course, the Yud, as we said, is the head, and the Hey is the upper the shoulders and the arms, and the Vav is the torso, and the head of the lower Hey is the hips and the legs, and it breaks down more and more specific. So if for example, if you try to see God's name and the Yud flies away from the upper Hey, that means your head and your heart are not connecting, which is not a good thing. We know what happens then. Life gets confusing. It's difficult to bring our thoughts into reality, into practice. And or the same thing on the other end. If the final Hey flies away from Yud Kei Vav, which is a divine name unto itself, it's a different name. If that Hey falls away, that's teaching us something else about our connection to kingship, because the final Hey is connected to kingship. So again, the more you know about these names, the letters, the parts, then you're able to intuit and infer information about your own soul at any given time when you meditate. And this is an ancient practice. This is not anything I invented, God forbid. This is something from the ancient Kabbalists way before the Arizal. Because because anybody who sits and meditates on God's name is going to eventually be brought to this understanding that this letter, this name that you're meditating on, is not like meditating on Bob or Alice or some other name. It's a completely different level. It is God's language in the body of man. Okay. So with all that said, I thought we'd go forward and do a little meditation. And as we did last week, we will, relax ourselves, get into a deep rhythmic pattern of breathing, release the day and all its tensions. And we will also begin to see the letter and chant the letter, trying to see the letter as clearly as you can, with as many sides as you can, with a vowel, if you can, each person according to their level. And remember, we're calling out to the letter. It is a living thing. It is a constriction of the infinite light of God into form. And so when we do that, let's see what comes back. And then we'll, after we meditate for a while, we'll stop and we'll talk about it. Okay? If there's no other questions, let's get comfortable. Remember, feet flat on the floor. I like to do yoga myself. I have a lot of friends that do, but yoga is not what we're after here. We're not after stretching. We're after letting the body fall asleep. And allowing the body to fall asleep is a discipline unto itself. So as we begin to breathe deeply through the nose, our feet flat on the floor, our hands resting comfortably on our knees, but not touching, our spine straight, receiving the blessing of air, clean air, pure air from a good heart. Pause at the top. Exhale. Pause at the bottom. In the moment of your pause, remember, you are in transition from an aspect of life to an aspect of death. And so too, all the universe pulses life, death, life, death. There is only one that does not taste death, the one who is all life, eternal, and true life. But we are designed to oscillate between the two. And in that space, we receive the gift of consciousness, the gift of choice, life, or its opposite, goodness, or its opposite. Continue breathing with gratitude for this time together. Each breath gets longer, deeper, fuller, more satisfying. Until you may feel nourishment from breath. Life itself is in the air. Release the day. All the troubles, the worries, the news, the tension, the resentment, the confusion. We don't deny those things. We just leave them outside our sacred space. And as we feel the separation, we have greater peace, more perfect center, less stress, more gratitude. Continue breathing. And we prepare to call to the holy letter, the channel of God's wisdom, the letter Vav, which is simply a straight column with a kamatz vowel beneath it, which is a bar with a dot. We call the letter, its power, its essence to us. See the letter. Feel it vibrate in your mouth, in your torso. Allow it to fill your mind. If you feel any tension, let it go. Let's see the letter. A living thing, a thing of power. creation of God, the sixth letter in the Holy Alphabet. What is the number 6? What is the Vav? What is its job? Its role in the creation of words and ideas. This is the universal language of God in the body of man. Where do you see the Vav in you? Where do you see the Vav in your name? Where do you see the Vav in your life? Perhaps nowhere. Perhaps this is totally new to you. Your innocence is your gift, because then you can receive completely from your intuitive knowledge. Whereas those who have already been introduced to this wisdom, their minds already presuppose knowledge. But the purest knowledge is the knowledge we have never known. And the greatest knowledge is to know we do not know. And yet there is a knower. And what is known? And what will be known? And what has been known and lost? Feel your voice. Do you push the letter through? Or does the letter push through you? Is it effortless or requires work? Imagine you are a tuning fork, vibrating the song of the universe. Vav. Continue breathing or chanting. Allow your mind to free associate with all that is around you. Allow your heart to long, to desire, to open. Allow your heart to break for God. For the Vav is in the place of the heart. Continue breathing. Some of you may wish to continue your chanting, to go deeper, farther, closer to the object of your desire. That is good. You should. Feel your body. Appreciate your body. Continue breathing, and we prepare to return to a more external world. The world of the other. The world of externality. We are new. Every few seconds, God pulses new life into the world through his name, through the letters of that name. So when we meditate on his name, we join the pulse of creation. Okay, we are still here. Each of us in our place. Opening our eyes can be a test. But we must see again the outer world. I hope some of you feel the sweetness of your inner world, how precious it really is. Okay. So as we did last week, oh, it's so good to stretch after sitting still like that. We have to move, right? Because that's what it means to be alive. Got to dance a little bit, loosen up the body. Can't sit forever. But let's go back to our method as of last week. Now, some of you might have been clever and checked out the Otiot of Rabbi Akiva as we spoke from the Sefer Shira, but that's okay. But this is a chance that each of you maybe open your mic and you can share for everybody, if you want to share what you experienced in this meditation on the letter Vav. And then I will tell you what Rabbi Akiva says.
So I had, there's a kind of a cane that's round with a hook, like on an umbrella. But there's another kind of a cane that's like a handle that's attached to a stick.
That's right.
So I had an image of that kind of a cane. And then as you were talking, the vision kind of went from a head on top of a body. And then I have a cat that came and sat on my lap and walked up my chest towards my head and stiffed my face. And then it gave me the mind and the body, or the head and the heart connection.
Oh. That was a real cat. That was in your real, that wasn't a meditation, right?
No, it was a real cat. And she never sits in my lap. So she felt something.
Wow, that's nice. So you feel like the cat was kind of helping to deliver a message.
A connection to the connection.
Right.
And my Hebrew name is Shoshana. So I think there's a vav between the two shins.
Oh, Shana. Well, I think there's a vav between the two shins, right? That's what
Yeah.
you said. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
right.
So it felt like it was like a balancing, also connecting the two shins.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Shoshana ben Amakim. There's actually a place in northwestern Israel that is known as the valley of those flowers that grow there, a purple type flower. There's Shoshana is not a rose, but people kind of loosely translate it that way. But there's actually a real place where the Shoshana grows, like in these huge fields.
Uh-huh.
It's considered a very delicate flower. Anyways, very nice, Shoshana. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, this is Amuna. Can you hear me?
Hi, Amuna.
Hi, shalom.
Shalom.
So I was going down a hallway with a lot of stairs following a man, and then I saw a Torah scroll, and
Wow.
then a spine and letters going into the spine.
Very nice. So you kind of span a lot of concepts there.
Something, yes.
Well, can you usually when you move from image to image like that, there's a trace of meaning behind it.
Okay.
Did you experience anything like that?
Well, I know the only thing that it was connecting me to was I'm doing some energy healing work,
Mm-hmm.
and we've been focusing on my spine, and she's been doing different letters each day into the spine. So that's the only thing I could connect it with.
Well, that's very good, because that is one of the symbolic references of the Vav, is the
Right.
spine, a straight line that connects
Right.
the upper and the lower. Very nice.
Okay. All right.
Well, you
Nice.
should be blessed to channel all the power of your soul in through your spine, and to we all need healing in the spine. This, this is the sedentary generation. We sit
Right.
on our screens too much, but yeah, there's a lot in that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Alan, I see you're gazing into higher imaginations. Turn on your mic. I don't hear you.
You hear me?
I hear you now. Yeah, hi.
Oh, thank you. Hi. Yeah, it's interesting because about 5 years ago, when I was living in Vancouver, I'm in Toronto now, I went to a limud and they did a session on meditation on Hashem's name. And I actually walked out because I wondered, wait a minute, is this appropriate? It's a very interesting thing, weird. But I've been a couple of times dropped in on your session for a little while and decided to sit on it today.
Mm.
And it was really interesting because I have done meditation before, and I kind of nodded off a few times. But the interesting thing was when I was verbalizing and feeling the Vav, what I found before I was nodding off was that I found that I was almost like visualizing it like inside of my trunk, like going down my chest, like just, vibrating there like it's inside of me.
Very nice.
And so it was really kind of interesting for me because I have heard, actually, I have a friend who bought one. I'm forgetting the name, but as an aside, if you can recommend, I have heard that there are Kabbalistic books on meditation, on holy names, etc., and methods. So I don't know if you recommend. I don't know if you particularly recommend the book or not.
Well, I've taught this discipline for quite a while. I have on my Patreon site, I have a full meditation series where we developmentally build letter by letter, level by level towards meditating on God's name. There are many names. Each represents a different force, a different place in the tree of life. So, you're welcome to check that out. I can also refer you to other meditations that I've done on Web Yeshiva. Here at the Lighthouse, we've meditated, almost nonstop for 20 weeks. Now, there are other people that teach this, and I guess, you have to go online. I learned most of my discipline from the Yeshiva Mekubalim, where I learned for many, many years, and in Jerusalem, and also a lot from the books of Rabbi Kaplan, Rabbi Nachman, the Baal Shem Tov, and you could get most of these works in English, according to your pleasure. Let's see. It's an important thing in this discipline, of course, is how we live our external life, but also, my motivation for meditation is very important because there are many types of meditation, and just relaxing is a good thing for a human being, and practicing deep breathing is a good thing. And Jewish meditation, especially though, is about transcendence to the higher soul, to connect to our root soul, our holy spark, that place where we start to become or connect to the pure godliness within. Not, and so we have to always have that in mind, that we are a channel for him, and that we long to be connected to him so that we do channel him in the most efficient and effective way. So I think a lot of the work that we need to remember, and I don't always mention it here, is this setting our kavana first. Our intentionality must be in place, because it's like if you set off in a ship in the ocean, you really have got to point the boat in the right way to get where you want to go. So, but I invite you to check that out and to join us here. You'll see on my Patreon site, there's several different tiers of membership. One of them is there is a one-on-one option where I do teach students one-on-one when they're more advanced. But these classes, I think, on Lighthouse have been very successful, I feel, and giving over a lot of information.
Yeah, thank you, Rabbi. If you can you just in the chat write your site or how I might contact you?
No problem. I'll try to do that. Anybody else like to comment? So, of course, the big news that many of you are already intuitively understanding is that the Vav, literally, it means a hook. But there are different types of hooks. And this hook is the type of hook that you put on the wall to hang your coat. Imagine in the ancient days when you lived in a stone house or a simple structure. You didn't have a fancy walk-in closet with drawers and all kinds of cabinets, etc. People hung things on hooks. So hooks were a very central part of life. And what does a hook do? Ask yourself that question. What does a hook do?
It connects.
It's such an obviously silly question, but
It connects things.
that's right. It connects things. That's right, Rena. Very good.
It holds things up.
Excellent. That's right. It lifts things from a lower level to a higher level. I don't want to leave my jacket on the floor. I want to hang it, in a higher place so it doesn't get crumpled and dirty, et cetera, et cetera. So the vav is a connector from something that would be lower to something that's higher. And so that's why all of your comments about the spine, and we spoke about it, are right on, because that's really what we are trying to accomplish here, is to make that connection above and below. I'm having a hard time typing here. We'll worry about that after.
Okay.
So the vav is this hook, but it's really what it's hooking. If you notice, amazingly, in the Torah, there are almost very few sentences start without a vav. I mean, of course, there are many that don't, but if you notice, like in the creation story, I was going over it tonight for a class I had earlier on Web Yeshiva about the creation and well, it's a complex class, but it's about creation and the 10 plagues, etc. But we go through the 10 statements of creation are actually the reverse of the 10 plagues. But you have to check that out over there. But it's and God said, and God said. It repeats it over and over, and each time it says and God said, that's called a statement of creation. And they all start with vav. And it gives this continuity to and rhythm and flow to the sentences that you wouldn't normally find. And if you tried it in English, it would be awkward and it would be obtuse. It would be sticking in your face, all the time. And I went to the store, and I went to Macy's, and I got some shoes, and I got a cab. And after a while, you're like, die, enough, and right. But in Hebrew, it's something else. It's like, because again, it's the Holy Torah. It's not just a story. It's a document of the expression of God's energy into the world. And so the vavs are these connectors from the previous thought to the next thought, from the previous idea to the next idea. And here I go. And it's getting late over here, folks. So what can I tell you? So this is something to pay attention to, these vavs, because they are connecting ideas and concepts and building a fabric of consciousness that the Torah has like no other document in the world. Even when you read the Torah in translation, which is nothing like reading it in Hebrew, when you have the real Hebrew and you chant the Torah, you're not, really go off with the Torah wherever it takes you. That's the beauty also of following the Torah leader in shul on Monday, Thursday, and Shabbos, if we merit, to sit there and now most readers read too fast for me. They don't have I don't know, they have their own rhythm. What can I tell you? But I like to go slow and get the music of the notes. And there are certain readers that have that sensitivity, and it's just a beautiful thing. And you really feel yourself transported to a higher place where you can feel the letters literally changing sound. And if you're musically sensitive, you'll know exactly what I mean. That the music carries you as much as you listen to it. It's pushing you, and it's just a wonderful thing. If you ever float out in the ocean and the waves, you know what I mean. The waves pull you, and you go with them. Then you swim against them. You swim with them, and it's the letters are doing the same thing to our soul. So it's a wonderful thing. Who's Liat fell asleep? Oh no, again. Ah, well, Liat, you have to, you see this little cup here. This is the I see the little brown liquid in the bottom.
Doesn't work.
Well, I've this is my fourth class this evening. It's busy Thursday, but you know, I look at it like, okay, I might not sleep so well, but it's worth it to me to be alert. What can I tell you? But listen, I wanted to add on this because Robert, you also mentioned sleeping, and it's not a terrible thing to fall asleep meditating. It's a wonderful thing, really, because it's the best sleep. You go straight into a deeper zone of sleep. I don't know if you'll hit theta or you'll stay in alpha or beta or whatever, omega, but still, they're all good.
Well,
And
I just woke up now because you mentioned my name.
really?
Yes.
Uh, where are you, Liat? I don't see you. Where? Let me come over here.
No, it's just that I don't have light. That's why.
Oh, you're in the dark. Okay. There's some kind of creature back there. I don't know. Okay, well, that might be part of why you want to fall asleep because the darkness adds extra, so shall we say, a comfort zone. But I wanted to say that, Robert, I wanted to ask you too, and Liat, you can answer this as well, or anybody that falls asleep, is when you're falling asleep, are you fighting it? Are you joining it? How do you relate to it?
I usually just go with it, me personally, but that happens a lot to me.
Okay.
I'm always falling asleep.
Yeah, I've done meditation for many years, although I've stopped for a while. And certainly, what I know from my experience personally was that when you're new to it or a process and you let it go,
Yeah.
and so I think it's a natural physiology. I sense that your body goes to a place, relaxes, and you fall asleep. It's almost part of that process, and it's almost from my perspective at least, something that over time you learn to say to let it take you to a certain level,
Uh-huh.
and then you stop there. But it's very common for people to fall asleep, going into this,
Oh
especially
yeah,
when they're just starting it.
certainly. Liat, do you have something you'd like to add?
Well, I usually at the beginning, when I start doing the meditation with you, I was falling asleep, and then I stopped because I wanted to discover more. But since today I was very tired,
Okay.
and I came to relax in that meditation. So I guess to that I just surrender. I surrender, and I fell asleep.
Maybe you could share with us, since you're a native Hebrew speaker, does this type of meditation speak to you in a different another way than, of course, you live in an English culture, but
Well, the letters, they always take me somewhere. I always I feel like I'm really connecting to God, and this is not what I'm experiencing when I'm doing a regular meditation. And it's like a different, it's above and beyond. It's just connecting with the universe, and it's also giving energy, because every time you tap on a letter, it's kind of, it's like playing the music, a different note.
Mhm. Very nice. Very nice. They are notes. It's just a very big piano. Very nice. Thank you. Um, being an American in Israel, the shift into Hebrew it can be difficult on many levels, but it I really see that I get more excited about Hebrew than most Hebrew speakers because it's so, every moment you're learning something new that a regular Israeli or something will take for granted because he just gets it normally or naturally.
Yeah.
There is what to be said for being a person who's learning Hebrew. You get such a geschmack, they call it in Yiddish, you know, a little spark from each little piece of experience that you get. I remember I was in yeshiva many years ago, and I was just learning Hebrew from the beginning, and I was in the Beit Midrash alone at night, and I caught myself thinking in Hebrew for the first time. Like normally, you know, you're an English speaker, you read the Hebrew, and you translate it into English so you can get something from it. And suddenly I started thinking in Hebrew, and I just got up and I started dancing. I was so happy, you know, to actually think to myself in Hebrew. So I'm sure it was a primitive conversation, but still.
Well, that happened to me too. I lived in Israel many years, and just today when I was learning something on the Parsha, it was
Yeah.
the katonet, the Joseph's robe. It was chelek. It was like a garment from Hashem, chelek.
Right.
But then I was thinking of chaluk, which is enrobes you, but it's not the word that's used there, but it's part of that. So it was just
Right.
interesting. I
Very
always
nice.
get those little things in there.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's a journey, and a lot of people get you know daunted by that when they come to Israel and to face living in a Hebrew speaking culture, but it's worth every moment. Okay, so anyone else would like to share about their experience of the Vav? We have a few more minutes.
The Vav felt very like talush, yanu, style, like it doesn't have like a strong presence, you know,
Yeah.
because it's just like a line standing there.
Uh-huh. Well, I think that's fitting because it is a one-footed letter, and it's a
It's
single.
also
Yeah.
and I say because also at like in the Tanakh when you have vav, it changes past to present and present to past too. Even though it's just standing there, it's doing something.
That's right. Very nice.
Wow.
So
I didn't know
for all
that.
of you, also, Alan, I will be next week starting a meditation series on a new channel called the Mentor Channel that you all can check out. You know, Jewish meditation is endless, and what gives it such power is when you open up the Tanakh and you start to see the teachings in the words of the prophets. They're giving over a lot of secrets that you don't really know when you first read it.
Yeah.
But when you go back and you go back and then you see it written here and you see it written there and you see every single prophet prophesies differently because every person's different and his root is different. And so you see that it's not just God speaking through Moses and God speaking through Amos and God speaking through King David. Each one is shaping that divine voice with his own soul. And it's just a wonderful thing, this symbiotic relationship we have with Hashem, that he's shaping us and we're kind of like shaping that power again into the world. And this just makes it more intimate and you feel much closer to God, as Liat was saying, you know, that the letters themselves, they bring you there. So, yeah, well, we only did one letter tonight. That's pretty amazing. Last week we did 5. We're slowing down, gang. I don't know what
We're all
gonna do.
tired. We're falling asleep.
Falling asleep. Well, okay, next week everybody bring their favorite cup of Starbucks. I don't know, whatever you like. Now I have to take the tryptophan to fall asleep. No, I've got work.
No.
Shabbos.
Rabbi,
Yeah,
if it's not too late, tangent question for 30 seconds, if I can.
please do.
Rhonda posted a couple of books that I guess Rabbi Shira mentioned, I guess on a Shira. And I actually used to have somebody that I met years ago, I studied with for a little while. had given me the book of creation. And I flipped through it a little bit, and I kind of said to myself, is this something that, people should be reading? Certainly, a beginner like myself, etc. And I gave it to, a rabbi. I said, I'm not sure that this is appropriate for me to have. I don't know what if you can describe describe what that book is. But is that appropriate for people to read?
Well, my first thought was that you must be a naturally humble person, Robert, to think that way, which is your credit, really, because when I ran out to buy that, the guy at the bookstore told me, "You don't want that." I said, "Wait." I was a brand new religious guy in LA, and he says, "No, you don't want that book." I said, "What do you mean? I want to learn that book." And he says, "No, it's not for you." I said, that made me want it even more, of course, right? But once I started learning it, I realized that there's a lot there that I can get in, and a lot that's going to take me years to incorporate. So as far as owning the book, it's a very deep thing. The Rosh Yeshiva, the Mekubalim, Nar Shalom, where I am for 27 years, told me, don't teach Sefer Yetzirah. Don't touch it, he told me, because a place in Ascent asked me to teach it, and it fell apart. And then a private student in tutoring asked me to teach it, and that fell apart. So Sefer Yetzirah is one of these books that you're right to be careful with. You're right to have respect for. Something you sit down and just let's talk about it, like the Parsha. Sefer Yetzirah is a book that you sit with line for line, word for word, maybe in a chavruta of two people that know, the terrain over there. However, Rabbi Kaplan in our generation did a tremendous work of collating all different versions and commentaries. And so his commentary makes it much more accessible and safer. Now, if I know guys that will go out and buy a book, I know a guy, it's pretty funny. He went out to buy Sefer Yetzirah because he thought he was going to make a golem, he wanted to make the Jewish Frankenstein, come on. Like,
Yeah.
What do you tell a person like that?
Yeah.
What you tell them is, I can help you in therapy, but no, I mean, really, you get so excited by the power that is imminent in these books, especially Sefer Yetzirah. But we're not here to make golems. The Maharal of Prague made a golem only not because he could. That's the worst reason. He did it because there was a blood libel, and the non-Jews in I guess at the time it was, I don't think it was called Czechoslovakia, but it was called Prague, right? I mean, they were baiting Jews and using blood and using it to bring murder charges against Jews. So in that case, if you're a Kabbalist, you're allowed to do special things. And even then, the golem caused him problems. So it's a lot of spiritual immaturity, I think. However, we don't buy it to make a Frankenstein #2. We buy it because I want to learn about creation. I want to learn more about the moments of creation. And really just the first few paragraphs will keep you busy for years. Literally, if you treat it appropriately, and with his commentary, you get a lot. So I think you better go back to that rabbi and tell him, okay. But it's good to learn it with somebody who's been around a bit, and so that's something that you have to look at, or at least to write your questions. You can always write me at Rabbi Avraham Shira at Gmail. You contact me there. You can write me questions there if you have. There's other factors involved that are more private and intimate that we're not going to talk about here, but a person's psychological stability is absolutely necessary to enter this discipline. Now, meditation is good for all people, but if a person meditates and it makes him think he's King David or something, then it's not good. And there are people like that.
Yeah.
So I'm not imputing that on you, David, Robert, God forbid, but I'm just sharing some of my experience. I've had at least 5 messiahs come into my yeshiva and sit down and talk to me. So, you know, it's funny, but it's not really funny. It's part of Jerusalem syndrome, where because the light of Jerusalem is so great that if you don't have a vessel to hold it, it can you know, shatter somebody's psychological stability. God forbid. Okay. So yeah, you can reach me there. Let me see if I can actually achieve the miracle of typing in. I know one time Michael typed in my there.
Yeah, he did. He typed in
Oh, he did
Yeah.
your Pantheon and your website.
Yeah, so feel free to contact me, and hopefully it won't be too long getting back to you. I try to scan the platforms. But we're going to continue. Like I asked last week, we could continue with the letters. Maybe we should do a little faster. This week, the Vav is very holy. You know, it's part of God's name. It's a different level of letter. So, you know, there's other letters to explore, and I think, look, I'm happy. I would do the whole Aleph Bet. It might take us 22 weeks, but okay, whatever. But I hope you all have a great Shabbat, and you should be protected and guarded and guided, and don't follow the herd. You know, unless they're all shouting immunity. You know, no, there's Israel is going. People are like, I got the funniest video, like an immunization party. You got it, an party for immunization. I'm like, okay. So I think that the one rabbi did say that the thing to do is just to wait and see. Let's see what happens in the beginning of this process that we're in. It's a worldwide process. It's a very big thing going on in the world. We should all be protected, and we have the Torah and we have the mitzvot, and they create the really the force field of around us to protect us from negativity of all kinds. So God bless you all with a great Shabbat, a holy Shabbat. Meditate on Shabbat is really the best of all worlds, especially about 2-3 in the morning, and I get there. So we'll see you again next week. Shabbat shalom to everyone.
Amen. You too.
Shalom.
Bye.